Hey everyone, it's Ten Types, and today we're looking at some new cards from the regular Pokemon TCG and Pokemon TCG Pocket and just a bunch of different things. There was an errata, which is very minor, but there are a few things that are pretty cool. So first of all, we have ourselves, and by the way, I am on the PokeBeach website here if you want to check out any of the information for yourself, but we have the Lapras EX as well as the Mankey. And Lapras EX is pretty solid here with 140 HP. It does 80 for 3 and heals 20 from this Pokemon. And if we look at the pocket cards, we see that you have the Articuno EX here, which is a pretty good card. It's a pretty strong card that does 80 for 3 and 10 to each opponent's benched. But the big benefit over Lapras EX is its first attack here, 40 for 2, which is quite nice, having that option to apply pressure earlier on, which is really good. Ultimately, I don't know exactly how much more value Lapras EX's Bubble Drain would have. I think Blizzard is they're pretty comparable attacks, but then having the 40 damage attack is quite nice. Lapras EX is a pretty cool card and one that I'm interested in seeing how much it gets played, and you can actually pair them together as well. Right now, there's a deck with you can just play two Articuno EXs and kind of just go from there. But ultimately, that deck lacks obviously a lot of options, so you could put in Lapras EX as well and go with those two. You could try to tank a lot with Lapras EX, but looking at the metagame right now, I suppose you're never getting one-shotted by Pikachu EX. They're only going to be hitting 120 at most on you, but then or they might have some other attacker that can one-shot you. But then on top of that, Mewtwo EX is one-shotting you. So ultimately, Lapras EX doesn't seem to be in a great spot in the meta and kind of outclassed by Articuno EX. Also has higher retreat. Articuno EX does have a retreat of 2, and then Lapras EX has a retreat of 3. But it still is a pretty interesting card here. Then we have this Mankey, which does 30, and it is a new card. And I mentioned this before, but it's a new card, which is pretty interesting. 30 for 1 fighting and 10 to itself, which is already not bad. I mean, it's not great at 10 to yourself normally with lower HP like this, and this card's just gonna get obliterated by Mewtwo EX quite simply. Like it'll get obliterated by like Ralts or Kirlia. That's not good, right? You don't want to be dying to Ralts. You're not getting one shot by Ralts necessarily, but if they Giovanni, then you can't really attack. If you Reckless Charge, they can Giovanni one shot you, which is crazy. You do 10, and you can die to it. But still, Mankey is good against something like Pikachu EX, and then of course you evolve into like Mankey with the Primeape. And this is a deck I've been seeing a decent amount on Pokemon TCG Live. You of course have the Primeape, which does with the attack Fight Back, which does 40 for 2 fighting, but 60 more if it does damage on it. And ultimately, this was hard to power up before, but now it's easier. The other Mankey has 60 HP, but has a weaker attack and does not damage itself. Mankey going down to 40 HP on a turn is really sketchy, but it does enable this really powerful attack, hitting 100 for 2. So if you go second, you attack turn 1, and then on turn 2, you attack again with the Primeape. That's a lot of damage. That's 130 damage, and your opponent isn't necessarily able to stop that. Though they might be able to. If they can, and you're not really able to maintain damage on the board ever, then you're not going to get really any value out of Primeape, and some decks can kind of just shut you down. They could just not hit into Primeape, and you're hitting 40, which is, despite your opponent losing a turn, they need to lose multiple turns, otherwise it's pretty weak. Because, I mean, I suppose if you just attack twice with Primeape and your opponent doesn't hit back, then that's pretty solid, but Primeape's it's not really that good without the Mankey. Puts your opponent in slightly awkward positions, but even against like Pikachu EX, a fighting type Pokemon, you are still getting one-shot by them, right? So that's not great. Ultimately, I think this is a solid card for a single point deck, and I think it is an okay single point deck. You have good ones like I'm trying to think. Most of the best decks are not 1 point. You have the Blaine stack, just swim through. And there are some good Pokemon, like Greninja EX and stuff. But like the Lightning Pokemon, they're there to support Pikachu EX. Then you have, I guess Alakazam's okay. Then Fighting has the Primeape. Primeape is pretty good on its own. It doesn't really need support from other stuff, though you could pair it with something else, like maybe an EX. Then you do have the Darkness stuff with the Weezing and the Arbok, and with the Muck as well. I don't think the Nidoking are particularly good. And you have Dragonite, of course, as well. But ultimately, most of these colorless Pokemon, or not the colorless Pokemon, the single point Pokemon are pretty mediocre compared to the EXs. And Primeape it's an okay one. It's somewhat mediocre, but it still is solid. We do have these erratas, which are super super nothing, to be honest, but I'm just going to read this out. Erratas are extremely rare, but two have just been issued. An errata, if you don't know, is a change to a Pokemon card. These are potentially problematic because they change the text on a card, but they don't say it. So they're just like, well, they don't say it on the card, so you just need to kind of look up to some other resource to know what your cards do. Ultimately, though, these are very minor changes, and it says it used to say when, and now it's being changed to whenever, and this is because when kind of implies just a once per turn. Um, or no, it did say once during a turn that when you do this, but it should say whenever, meaning they can be activated multiple times. This is kind of interesting, not exactly sure, but it's kind of weird. Like Venusaur and Snivy GX here is a card that's been rotated out of the game for a while, and it's I don't really know why that one's the case. But in Minior, this is like kind of interesting. I guess it is a card in standard, and so you can like switch it out multiple times now. That's ultimately a it's a very whatever thing, but they are changing it, which is kind of interesting. I don't really know why they're changing this. And by the way, this is the text on the Pokemon. This one on the menu, this one on the Venusaur and Snivy GX. So this is fine. I don't really know why they're doing this. I feel like it just kind of minorly complicates things. Some erratas are like kind of meaningful, like super odds errata. I believe that got errata. Yes, super odd, which says shuffle up to three in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy from the discard into your deck. But the old one got errata, which said shuffle three, not up to. Oh, here, yeah. So here's the errata text. Here's the text in the actual card. And so it's supposed to say up to three. They changed it later with I believe, the just newest, the Paldea evolved. Super Odd, and ultimately, Super Odd is a very impactful card, and this is a meaningful thing. It doesn't come into play all that often. I don't know. It comes into play a decent amount. There are definitely times you just want one or two cards. It doesn't like completely break the game open, but it does make some changes. We do have Black Belt here. Black Belt is a supporter, and this one says this is a new supporter, and it's getting a bunch of different prints. We also have this new Suicune. Black Belt here says that it's a supporter saying you do 40 more to your opponent's active EX, and that's pretty good because EXs obviously are pretty good in the game right now. Is Black Belt a reprint? It is. But it's changed a little, which is kind of weird. I don't exactly know. Oh, this is not Black Belt. This is Black Belt's practice. So this is cool, I guess, with the different arts. And ultimately, I think this is a pretty solid card. We can get value by going and just playing this against certain decks, and that's pretty good. But it's obviously not like a ton of damage. But I think it's a support that we'll end up seeing some amount of play. It can be used with EXs. EXs are obviously very good in standard, but exactly how good will this support to be? It's probably not going to be like super insane. I mean, we've seen stuff like Leon and Professor Yakui, and I think it will, which are similar, and this does more increased damage, and I think it will see some play. I don't know damage thresholds like super well. Like I don't know what Pokemon are falling short on damage thresholds that could be good, but ultimately this is a solid supporter definitely. Then we do have Suicune here with its attack here, overrun 30 to your opponent's active, 30 to when they're benched. That's pretty whatever. But yeah, Black Belt definitely a supporter, and we got 9 arts. Yay! I don't think it needs 9 arts, but we got it. It's from the EX starter decks. Lastly, we have Badoo. Oh, this didn't load. There we go. Badoo, which is another baby Pokemon, free HP or no, free retreat, 30 HP, free attack cost, and you are grass basic, and you do for free 10 to your opponent's active, and during their next turn, they can't play any items. This card seems really good. Like, this card, I don't know, it's a little sketchy with obviously having really low speed. That's the big downside, but this attack's really good. Ultimately, I think this is quite strong and very scary for a lot of decks to go up against. It is something that allows you to really like hurt your opponent by just item locking him right away. There's not really much counterplay to this. Turn 1 going second, you guarantee get this Badoo into play. And even pairing it with something like Black Belt, which is actually kind of interesting. I'm pretty sure these two have nothing to do with each other on the reveal. I don't think they're... I don't know when this is coming out internationally. I think it's coming out later. It's weird with the Japanese schedules versus like the international ones. But anyways, Badoo is... And this is Terrestrial Festival, which will be part of Prismatic Evolutions. And yeah, it's releasing December 6th. Okay, that's like a month away in Japan, and that's releasing at the beginning of the year internationally. It's the one with the evolutions, and apparently this new Hoot Hoot analyzes professionalism, so that'll be kind of fun. But this Badoo, I think, is pretty strong. Like, it seems like a good baby. We have seen what's the best one? Like, Clef is the best one, and the second best one is like Elekid, maybe. There are two Clefas, obviously. The draw one is the best one. Ultimately, I think these are some pretty. I think this is a pretty good baby. Like, I think it's definitely one that we'll see play. I don't think it's better than Cleffa. Cleffa's like good, but Cleffa's not even. It's not like Cleffa's a broken card or anything like that. But it is pretty good, and I think Badoo will like. I don't know exactly what you play this in. I looked briefly at the comments on this Pokebeach article. Someone's like, "Oh, you could play it in like Mankey EX to get that tournament item lock, which you can't really necessarily get right now. You can get it on a coin flip, but it's not guaranteed." I think you could play this in all sorts of things. The damage is so low, but it isn't nothing, which ultimately is probably bad. Like, you'd rather be nothing, honestly, like for control decks, and you'd rather be higher, obviously, just in general for other decks. So this is kind of weird in this awkward middle ground, but ultimately I do think Badoo will end up seeing play and being very annoying to deal with. But anyways, tell me what you think of these cards down below. I'm interested in seeing more card reveals as well, but hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hit the bell, joining the channel, all that good stuff, and as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.